are still doing our best, both for God and country. It still makes our lives worthwhile. I've been asked what I have done since getting out of the service. First, and probably most important, I have raised 2 children to be constructive and helpful American citizens. Aside from that, I have made use of my military education by working in several civilian hospitals as a laboratory technician. I have taught both in college and the public schools. I have worked in retailing, both selling and managing, and as a secretary. I also worked for many years as both the school and public librarian. I know this seems like a lot, but it has been over a period of many years. I came to Amsterdam, New York, to be part of the media program in the public schools. After several years, however, it became necessary to retire for physical reasons. Since retirement at a doctor's suggestion, I joined some community organizations, most notably the Amsterdam Lionettes in their work with the visually impaired. I've been active and held offices in several church organizations, the Senior Citizens Group, the Ladies of Charity, the Cavalry Tekakwitha League, and the Secular Franciscans at local and regional levels. My greatest energies, however, have been expended in veterans activities, primarily in the American Legion, of which I have been a member for 20 years. Maybe a little more than that now. At the post level, I have served as historian for many years, an adjutant for 5 years, membership chairman for 4 years, WINAL, that is Women in American Legion, chairman since 1989, blood donor chairman for 5 years, and co-chairman of the oratorical contest. At the county level, I have been historian since 1990, several membership positions, blood donor and oracle chairman, WINAL chairman since 1989, district WINAL chairman since 1991, and department, that means the state, WINAL chairman during the 1994-95 year. I have also enjoyed being active in other Legion activities, particularly our free Christmas dinner for the needy and our post newsletter. I have also been a field representative for the WIMSA, I'm sure you know what that is, Memorial for Women Veterans at the Gateway to Arlington Cemetery, and working for the National World War II Memorial. In addition to Legion activities, I've been an active volunteer at the Albany VA Medical Center for the past several years. I think it's at least 20, I'm not sure. Working 1 or more days per week and serving as VAVS, that's voluntary service, representative for the 20 and 4 Honor Society for the Women Legionnaires. By the way, that red jacket down there is, maybe you'll get a chance to look at it, but it tells of the things that I did there. Not that I care whether anybody pays attention or not. For the 20 and 4. I was Director VIP, that means Commander, of New York State Echelon 42, writing for our Empire State Jeep newsletter, and served as Assistant CQ, that's Sergeant at Arms, and National CQ and National Sky Pilot, which means chaplains, as I guess you know. My philosophy: at best, life is sufficiently short that when time is ours, that which Time as ours should be spent in ways and activities that will help our fellow men and our world, even if it is only being there for others. I quote, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might." That's from Ecclesiastes 9:10. And whatsoever you do it heartily as unto the Lord. Let me mention one more thing, because I think it is you. Huh? Okay, we'll forget it.
We'll save it for after. I want to now ask Helen Broccoli to come on up. Helen was a U.S. Army nurse, was with the U.S. Army Nurse Corps during World War II from 1945 to 46, and she was stationed in Manila. She's with the 840, the Albany Salon 121, and has been president of the Blanchard Unit for 6 years here in Albany County. Well, I shouldn't say here, that's my normal life. Albany County of the Auxiliary, and she's been very active in the American Legion Auxiliary. Helen Broccoli.
I am honored to be here to record my military experiences from the museum archives. It is unfortunate the experiences of many other servicemen and women have been lost in the last 59 years. After graduating from St. Peter's Hospital Nursing in 1944, I enlisted in the Army Nurse Corps in February of 1945 and was placed on active duty March 15, 1945. My first assignment was at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where I initially received my basic training and graduated on April 21st, 1945, with 294 other nurses as lieutenants in the Army Nurse Corps. What a proud day. Immediately arriving at Fort Devens, we were put on nursing duty, as it was a busy time because casualties were being flown into Logan Airport in Boston from the European theater to be cared for at the Fort Devens. Many of these wounded were from the Battle of the Bulge. 3 months later, I received orders to report to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for overseas duty. Equipped and ready, I left Fort Dix, New Jersey for deployment to the Pacific Theater. After a long journey by hospital ship, I finally arrived in Manila, the Philippine Islands. I was assigned to nursing duties at the 249th General Hospital in Manila City for a year and attended to the wounded soldiers. I then was assigned to the USS Millie hospital ship and brought back more wounded soldiers from Tokyo. I then returned to the States in August 1946, and I enjoyed the trip back cross-country by train from San Francisco to East Greenwich, New York, where I was discharged from military service to once again civilian life. I learned a great deal on my military tour of duty in the States and overseas, which was invaluable in my civilian life. Having grown up in the little town of East Greenwich, New York in the 1930s, and as a young 21-year-old nursing graduate, joining the military gave me an experience I shall never forget. The military certainly gave me opportunities I never expected. Being part of the military has given me the greatest respect for all men and women who so bravely risk their lives for their country. It was a humbling experience to be able to take part in a small way to care for these wounded men and women in World War II. In 1948, while stationed at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, I cared for many wounded casualties from World War II, Battle of the Bulge. It was devastating to see so many wounded and hurt young men, but I administered them to all ways possible. Caring for these soldiers and administering to their needs was one of the most satisfying experiences in my nursing career. The military also gave me a great opportunity to travel to many places that I may never have experienced. After my duty at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, I traveled on the USS Charles A. Stafford hospital ship from New York Harbor to the Panama Canal on way to Army nursing duties in the Philippines. What an experience going through the canal zone. The ship stopped for refueling in Hawaii. To my dismay, I was able to see firsthand the destruction and the bowels of the sunken ships at Pearl Harbor. So much devastation and loss of life. After spending 2 days here, we were off to our destination at nursing duties in the Philippine Islands. Upon disembarking, we were all given our orders, and I was assigned to the 249th General Hospital in Manila, where all the wounded were finally brought. Again, I administered to the needs of the wounded soldiers, doing whatever I could to help them recover from their injuries. I remained at this hospital for 1 year until I was assigned to the USS Millie hospital ship, which was headed to Tokyo to pick up more wounded soldiers for their trip back to the United States. Again, it was a wonderful experience being part of this ship. That was my last nursing assignment, and I was honored to honorably discharged from the Army Nurse Corps on August 26, 1946. Remembering back to my military time in the Philippines as a young nurse, the Philippine women would make nurses almost anything in exchange for a candy bar or a pack of cigarettes. I remember receiving beautifully handmade silver butterfly pins in exchange for a simple candy bar. As a matter of fact, one Philippine woman made me a beautiful gown of an Army parachute for a New Year's Eve party, all in exchange for a candy bar. One thing that I didn't find that intriguing in my military career, when I was stationed in the Philippines and our sleeping bunks were surrounded by lizards. We were provided with canopies to hang over the beds and down the sides, but I surely didn't like waking up having those wide-eyed lizards sitting at the top of the canopy and looking down at me as I lay in bed. Not all my military experiences were as unpleasant as lizards. In fact, I was quite taken back by one very wounded young soldier at Fort Devens, who later became my husband. Having nursed his wounds and cared for him, and once he was healed from his catastrophic injuries.
Good news, it's only water. Those microphones are tough. Hang on one second.
That's all right.
Sure. Just right there.
Okay. Having nursed his wounds and cared for him, and once he was healed from his catastrophic injuries, he returned to his hometown in Delmar, New York. Once I had returned from my overseas military duty, we began dating and went to marry and raise a large family of 4 sons and 4 daughters, one of which was served in the Coast Guard for 10 years. Perhaps I would never have met this special heroic Purple Heart soldier had I not been an Army nurse. Overall, serving in the military is one of the greatest contributions a person can give back to the country for all the freedoms we enjoy in this country and take for granted. Only after witnessing and being part of the military does one know how important a strong military of men and women means to the nation and our security. I continue to be active in the American Legion Auxiliary. I have been a volunteer at the Stratton's Veterans Medical Center in Albany, New York for 18 years, accumulated 20,060 hours of service as a VAVS representative and a deputy representative in 1991. I attended the dedication of the Women's Memorial in Washington in 1999. Last year, I flew to St. Louis to receive the National 2000 Outstanding Women Veteran of World War II Award. I just returned from Washington to the dedication of the World War II Memorial, which was a great experience. Thank you for letting me share my Army experiences. Thank you.
Just don't trust us with a glass of water and a microphone. What an experience. Oh, you're good. She's got nursing written all over her. You know, jump right in there. And thank you very much. These are just, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm envisioning. I'm wrapped in the moment so far with all 3 of you ladies. I'm right there back in the moment with you. Next, I'd like to introduce Pat Palmer. She was with the U.S. Women's Army Corps following the Korean War from 1955 to 57. She now lives in Malone. She enlisted in the WAC here in Albany, took basic training at Fort McClellan, and completed the Military Secretarial Training School at Fort Benjamin Harrison, fulfilled her commitment at the Pentagon as a military secretary with the Department of Defense Research and Development and Financial Management branch offices. She was based at Fort Myers, Virginia then. Nominated twice for WAC of the Month. She contemplated re-enlistment, but we kidded. She found a good-looking guy and got married instead. And then you've got to finish the rest of that story, Pat, as you told me what he has said to you through the years. Come on up. Say when you thought, yeah?
Well, I came to a big decision when I was getting out, or stay in and re-enlist, and get out to get married. And there were a few times that he's wished I had re-enlisted. Quite a few times. But he's still there. I'm accustomed to all this. I started out as a volunteer at the Red Cross Albany Veterans Hospital when it was first opened.
Hold on one second. Nope, that's not it. I think we're just not getting everybody. Just hold it right there. Would you be comfortable holding it? Right it down? No souvenirs.
Okay. There were the... Oh. I'm going to make this short. We would take military hops on long weekends just to get the pilots. Thank you. Pilots.
This is the toughest part of the whole deal. They give us lessons in this and teachers, you know. There you go. Right, now we're in business.
Okay, where did we go?
Flights.
We would go to Andrews Air Force Base and catch a hop to Florida for the weekend. And that was all free, and we were stationed in the Washington, D.C. area, which was great sightseeing. There was so much going on, and it was all free. I belonged to the sharpshooter with the rifle club at Fort Myer. Other than the dances at the green room every week, and a member of the honored body bearers for women veterans or women family members of veterans. It wasn't, we weren't accepted that well in the beginning with the people I worked with at the Pentagon, but we became friends. I guess they were afraid of the unknown, and we became friends, and I still hear from many of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Now, our next speaker is Thelma Terry Waterston with the U.S. Marine Corps from 54 to 56. Her clerical duties at Camp Elmore in Norfolk, Virginia, headquarters of Marine Corps in Arlington, Virginia, as well as at Quantico. She's held several positions with the American Legion Post 629 in North Creek. Also belongs to the Marine Corps League, the Korean War Veterans Association, and the American Legion Auxiliary. Terry?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today to honor so many wonderful ladies that have shown the duty to God and country. My sister and I, my older sister, by 18 months, we saw a poster prior to graduation from high school. Join the Marines and free a man to fight. We thought, that's for us. So we did. And I went to boot camp prior to my sister. And it was nothing like the Army basic training that my daughter went through prior to the Gulf War. And she will tell you that at later. My first duty station was Norfolk. I was in administration. My sister never took typing, so she wound up in the motor pool. Following the tour of duty at Norfolk, I was assigned to Headquarters Marine Corps and enrolled students at the Marine Corps Institute at the Naval Gun Factory. I met my first husband there. He was a career Marine. We had a wonderful son. Prior to Vietnam, he unfortunately passed away upon return from classified duty with another government agency. 3 years later, I married an Army sergeant, yes, who was stationed at Fort Belvoir and had 3 wonderful children, enlarging our family to 6 people. It wasn't exactly what I did in the Marine Corps. It was sort of mundane compared to these World War II veterans and the combat vets. But I feel that what I learned in the Marine Corps has enriched my life, has taught me discipline and perseverance and a special feeling of honor to help my fellow man. And I wanted to teach this to my children, which I did. My oldest son is a retired master sergeant. They go in numbers. My number 2 son, who joined me with my granddaughter today, is Army National Guard. He was activated on his second tour to right after 9/11 to guard the airports at Albany Airport and JFK. My 3rd son is very active as a career Niagara Mohawk man. Just don't call him when the power goes out. My daughter is an Army sergeant, a disabled vet from the Gulf War, and there again I said I would tell you the story. But they all, through their years, have followed my lesson of helping your fellow man. They've all had taken the opportunity to serve, help their friends, and in the present crisis, they have come forward to devote their time and energy to help our troops that are presently serving in Iraq. I find that I have done so much on the outside, more than what I did when I served in the Corps. But it is because of my experience and sense of duty and responsibility that I learned in my training in the Marine Corps that I am where I am today. I have a display out there. I have my picture, my basic training picture from 1954. If you would notice, to the left is a male drill instructor, Sergeant Greenwood. And it was not until almost 50 years after that picture was taken that I was able to contact Sergeant Greenwood. He had written a book that was given to me just off the cuff by some Army sergeant who had come to North Creek to pay tribute to a foxhole buddy of his that had been killed in Korea. And a memorial had been placed just outside of North Creek. And he came all the way from Texas with his wife to place a wreath at this memorial. And he wanted to find out more about the area. And they said, call Terry. She works at the Copperfield. She'll invite you down for a cup of coffee. So we got our heads together, and he found out I was a Marine, former Marine. But once a Marine, always a Marine. And as he talked to me, he says, I have something you might like. He said, I want you to have this book. It was called Once Upon a Lifetime, written by a gentleman that I know, a Sergeant Greenwood. And then the mind starts clicking, and I looked at the book, and it shows a picture of him coming out of the Chosin Reservoir. And I turned to the back, and I said, he looks familiar. So when I got back home, I'm rummaging through my pictures, and there he was, my drill instructor from Paris Island. And I thought, wow, how am I going to get in touch with him? Well, of course, I had to read the book. And not being computer-oriented, I contacted my sister. And she pulled up a Legion post in Illinois. And says, that's where I'm going to start. Well, anybody that is military knows if you call a Legion post, you're going to wind up with the bartender. So she very briefly explained who she was, and she wanted to contact Sergeant Greenwood. So the gentleman, not putting his hand over the phone, says, hey, there's a band here who wants to talk to Carl. And he said, well, we can't give you the number, but we'll take the message. And afterwards, several weeks later, I got a wonderful letter from Sergeant Greenwood. But it was not signed Sergeant Greenwood. It was signed Grandpa. And he has done just what I did, what he taught me to do, to serve God and country, my fellow man, raise my family, to pay the respect to the flag, to the fellow human beings. and I salute all of you.
Claudia Collins, that's the name I was thinking of. When we got talking, I said, I used to work with a gal who served in Vietnam that I think about the same time that our next speaker, Margot Wright-Zeglis did. You know, it's a small world, you never know, you gotta throw the names out. It's always possible. I guess not. But she was a lot of fun. Margot served in Vietnam from 69 to 70, and she's now living up in Plattsburgh. After graduating from the University of Georgia in 69, Margot applied and was accepted into the American Red Cross Supplemental Activities Overseas Program, affectionately called the Donut Dollies. After training in Washington, she served in Cu Chi with the 25th Infantry Division, Benoit with the Air Force, Army, and Marines, and Way with the 101st Division. I just have to backtrack. I think you can only refer to a woman as a donut dolly if she's carrying a gun. I think you'd be in trouble otherwise, right? She married an Air Force lieutenant and moved to Plattsburgh, had 2 kids, and traveled the world until her husband retired from the service, and then they came back to Plattsburgh. And from 87 to 90, Margot worked with refugees from 60 different countries as they fled to Canada in pursuit of freedom. When she applied, this I find fascinating, Margot, when she applied for her first interview in the civilian world, she lost the job because of her service in Vietnam. Margot completed her Master's in Health Services Administration at Russell Sage here in Troy. She has her license as a nursing home administrator and is the executive of an independent and assisted living community in Plattsburgh. She attended her first reunion of Vietnam veterans last summer at the 10th anniversary of the Women's Memorial. And she's most pleased to be here. So, no, that's me.
To be here today. I really appreciate it, and to those of you who have served overseas and served in our military services, welcome home to all of you. I'm a donut dolly, and as Colonel Landry mentioned earlier, a round eye is a nickname that was also applied to us, or Buku Baby San. I served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970. After graduating from college, deciding not to take that teaching job in Fort Lauderdale, and upon the recommendation of my mother, I went to Vietnam to serve with the American Red Cross. We developed programs, just like you watch on quiz shows right now. We had 6-week cycles where we developed programs that we took out into the field while the soldiers were down. Much of the war was fought at night, and we went out during the day. We carried your ditty bags, the bandages, many of the things so many of you sent to the Vietnam soldiers and military people who were in service there. We took those ditty bags out. We had games that we played, and the hills would be filled with 200 soldiers, and here would be 2 of us standing down here giving a quiz show. And there's nothing like having 200 fellas looking at you and enjoying every minute of playing the quiz game. We weren't always welcomed by the officers on the base, but we were always welcomed by the fellas who did all the fighting out there. And for an hour or 2, we talked about their sisters, we talked about their mothers and fathers. We flew helicopters into the bases, and we flew helicopters out. We shared a lot of joys, many frightening times, many wonderful memories. There were certainly times when I couldn't pull upon strength that I needed, and there were many times that I was very pleased and proud that I could be there for someone. It was a wonderful experience. I think you mentioned all the places I was. We did serve from I Corps all the way down to 4, was it 5 Corps? Did we have 5 Corps? Just 4 Corps, don't you? 4 Corps, I thought so. My mind's beginning to go. I was very pleased to be an attendee at the 10th anniversary of the Women's Memorial. I think serving in Vietnam has been not a life-changing experience, a life-inspiring experience. And as you mentioned, I did lose my first job when I applied to work with an organization when they read that I had served in Vietnam. The conversation during the interview turned to that, whether you were for it or against it. And with those of us who went to Vietnam with the Red Cross, I would say most of us didn't have a political connection. We were really there because some of us thought it would be a great adventure. Some thought that we needed to be there to be of assistance to those who had to be there to serve. So we weren't politically motivated. But now, I think after all these years, I've become more involved with those of you who have served, with veterans, and getting to know some of the women who have also served throughout the years has been an exciting, fulfilling experience for me. I would like to let you know that there were 4 donut dollies that were killed in Vietnam. Their names are not on the big wall because they were not in the service. They were just volunteers. I think I would like to just close in letting you know that it was a wonderful experience and it was a wonderful honor to get to know our military people. And I'm enjoying getting to know them more and more as I become more involved in situations like this. But I too would like to close with a 3rd verse of a poem called Fire Support Base Andromeda, written by Steve Shaw and sent here to us through Carrie Pardue, who was a Vietnam medic, as a tribute to a dolly. We really did like that name, the Red Cross did not. As they came closer, he recognized the lead dolly in this divine trinity. She had been here in the fall, the day the base was hit. She had refused to run to the safety of the bunker, choosing instead to stay with a badly wounded GI. While feet away, someone was calling in an airstrike. She was with him when he died, crying out for his mother. Yet 30 years from now, she would still not be a veteran, nor would her dead sisters' names be on the dark monolith to the fallen, according to the rules made by people who were not here, their rules. Thank you again.
Margot, I can go to the after conversations, and every bit is wonderful. It's just the presentations. Millie Dillinger is up next. She was with the U.S. Army from 74 to 1977. She was stationed in Germany during the Cold War. She was with the military police. She now lives in Galicia. And probably, as we all watch with the passing of President Reagan, being that you were stationed in Germany during that time, it had to be particularly poignant for you.
By bringing them up.
Bring the tissues. Millie.
I'd like to start off by saying that I'm really pleased to see as many young faces. Last year we had a good crowd, not a lot of young people, and you guys are the ones that are going to keep our stories alive. It makes a difference, and I thank you. I enlisted in the, from day one I knew I was going to be in the military someday. It's what everybody in my family did. I knew I was going to be an MP even when everybody was telling me girls can't be MPs. I just knew someday it would change, and fortunately it did by the time I got done. My husband Jeffrey is a veteran. We've got 2 daughters. Our oldest one just got back from the Middle East. Our youngest one is going to leave in December. She's going to be a Navy medic. As a mom, as an MP, I had a great time. Loved it. As a mom, I was so thankful. And I can tell my voice is shaky. But that our daughter went into finance. You know, you get little jokes about finance, but as a mom, it was like, oh, thank you. Then our youngest one, college educated, as an enlisted man, as a medic. But, you just think, and she did the same like me. She's like, Mom, and it must be the nurse thing. She's like, Mom, it's got to be tough no matter what. She says, but if I were a guy in a field, wounded, she says, and I opened my eyes, and I saw a pretty blonde girl. It's got to be a little bit nicer to have, that's her view. I went in just because everybody did. I was stationed there, and like you said, Ronald Reagan. Whether you liked him or not, I know a lot of his budget cuts during his time affected the military. But the biggest thing for me was I'd been to East Berlin before the wall came down. And it's really different. It's hard to explain. I said to people, the air felt different. I mean, you got over there, and it wasn't happy, and I was in a happy world. But I mean, you look, even the children, it was just, you felt bad for the children. There was just, you thought, this isn't right, and it's not like you could touch it. It just, and when I came back, then the Cold War became real to me. Before that, it was, go back. I should have kept more notes. Last year when I came up here and spoke, and I talked about what a great time I had in the military and all the fun stuff I did, because then the slogan was, it's not just a job, it's an adventure. I took it to heart. And when we left last year, my husband says to me, he goes, babe, this was nice, the book is great. He says, you didn't talk about anything you did. And I said, I was a cop, everybody, I didn't do anything anybody else did. And he said, I didn't hear anybody mention smelling vehicles, or, and he's gone through different things. And again, my first run-in with KGB was more like KGB meets Gomer Pyle. It was just kind of happened. And even during the debriefing, I'm sitting there, 18 years old, thinking, oh, wait till I tell Brother Paul, KGB. And then you come back from Berlin and you see them in a whole different light. And when I'm home years later, got my babies, and I watch on the TV and I hear Ronald Reagan say, Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall. You knew it was coming down. And when it did, I stood in my living room and cried like an idiot by myself. For the children, we made a difference. I really, truly believe this. And I think the children are the future of the world, not just our country. So, I mean, that was a big thing. Terrorism, I was going to, again, my husband said didn't talk about anything we did. And I could stand up here and talk about Patty Hearst's investigation, because you were involved in it because you had to investigate. I mean, we're in Germany, and at the time it was a joke, because you're thinking the SLA and the Weidenbaum Hof, they're not going to ever. But then that made me think of terrorism, which was very real at the time, and it's very real, I think, in everybody's world nowadays. It's something I don't think you ever get used to. And I don't know, and now, like I said, my daughter's just come back, and our youngest one is heading out, and I'm proud of them, but you worry about them. And okay, and that's probably it. I had a great time when I was in. Like I said, my life might have been different if the slogan was an army of one. We won't go there. We won't go there. And you older women, all I can say, and I don't say that meanly, but all I can say is thank you for paving the way. Because I know I had a lot of times where I was banging my head against the wall, and I know it was nothing compared to what you women went through to make it easier for us. And I look at my daughters and think, you guys helped. You made a big difference, both, all of you. So appreciate everything.
Thank you, and I'm sure that everyone here is going to keep a good thought for the safety of your daughter.
Oh, thank you. I have son-in-law and
And there's a lot of power in this room. Pamela Waterston. Pam was with the U.S. Army from 89 to 91. Yes, we heard her mom talk a little bit earlier. It's tag team here. She did her basic training in Fort Dix, and during the Gulf War she was in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait from August of 90 to May of 91. She was with the U.S. Army Reserves from 91 to 2000, and medically discharged in 2000 as a sergeant, E5. She belongs to the American Legion Post 629 in North Creek. She's also a life member of Veterans of Foreign Wars and Disabled American Veterans. She's originally from up north in North Creek. Now she lives in Virginia, in Richmond, and came home to come share with us this afternoon. Pam?
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Waterston. I served, a combat veteran of Desert Storm. I served from 1989 to 91, as BZ said. You took most of my speech.
Blame her.
I went through basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Unfortunately, it took me 5 months to get through basic training. I was injured when I was going through. They wanted to medically discharge me then, and I said, hell no, I won't go. My specialty training I took in Fort Eustis, Newport News, Virginia. I became a cargo specialist. I operated cranes and forklifts. Over in Saudi Arabia, I loaded and unloaded ships. We worked side by side with the men, did everything the men did. There was no, oh, women are weak, women can't do. We did. When we first got to Saudi Arabia, there was some conflict because the Islamic women weren't allowed to do many things. So there was some...
We can't hear you back here.
There was some conflict when we went to Saudi Arabia. The women were not allowed to take off their BDU shirts. We had to wear our BDU shirts, sleeves down, because it would be considered a disgrace if we wore our sleeves up, showed our elbows, or we took our shirts off. After a while, we were not used to the weather, therefore we were close to passing out, and I guess the higher-ups discussed the situation with the Saudi soldiers and the higher-ups and said, hey, we're not used to this weather. The women have to take their shirts off or they're going to fall out and we won't have them to work with. So after a while, we were able to take our BDU shirts off. I worked on the pier, unloading the ships, and also we pulled guard duty and looked over the equipment and the ammo that was taken off the ships until the appropriate units came and picked it up. I don't ever regret going into the military. The main reason why I went in was I went through a year of college and I hated dorm life and sitting in a classroom. And I wanted to adventure and be out there and doing something. At the time I went in, I had my 2 older brothers that were in. Unfortunately or fortunately, I was the one that was called up to go over to fight in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I heard through the grapevine that they were like, no, we don't want our baby sister going. But I informed them that I raised my hand to serve my country, and if it was to go over there and do my job, then that's what I was going to do. When I returned from the Gulf, I went into the reserves. I reclassified my specialty. I became a carpentry masonry instructor at Fort Leonard Wood. Unfortunately, medical problems from the Gulf kept me from continuing my service in the military, and I was medically discharged in 2000. I just want to also say that my old unit is on their 2nd and 3rd rotation over in Iraq, and my heart goes out to them. I wish I was there with them, but unfortunately circumstances prevented me from being over there. But I'm there in heart and spirit, and just a small prayer for everybody who's serving over there and those who have fallen to keep our freedom going. Also, I have made some items that will be for sale afterwards, and the proceeds will go towards purchasing items for the females who are currently over there. I know it was important to me, when I was over there and I received boxes of items and letters. So if you know anybody who's over there or would like to know or get a name of somebody who's over there and you'd like to write them, just let me know afterwards. Thank you.
Kimberly Turpin was not able to join us today, but just a quick, she's with the U.S. Air Force, and she took part in the South Pole rescue of Dr. Jerry Nielsen, that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. She lives north of here, and Kim's been a registered nurse for 25 years and a flight nurse with the 139th Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron over at the Stratton Air National Guard Base in Scotia. She's been with them for 19 years, and I can attest to the fact she's one great gal because I've had the opportunity to meet with her and talk with her. So it's unfortunate she couldn't join us today, but sometimes life gets in the way.
She's on duty.
And the one I said before, Nooney's helped me out with, she's the one who was kind enough to put together the bios on everyone who's been here today. And most of you, if you don't know, Nooney Fortin, with the Army Reserve from 75 to 97, she trained first as medical records clerk before reclassification to medical supply clerk. Nooney's done a whole load of things, but I really have to say probably Nooney's role in life, and I met her in this capacity, and it's so many years ago, I may have been about 3 hair colors different, maybe 4, but who's going to quibble? We're all friends here, right? Nooney was instrumental in getting the story of entertainer Martha Ray out to the public and getting Martha Ray honored because, for those of you who don't know, she served and she was really quite a gal, much more than just the big mouth as an entertainer, and Nooney was trying to bring her story out and get Martha recognized, and that's how we met. And Nooney's role has been to get women together to speak of their experiences, to have those experiences honored, and to, in that way, then open the door for other women to be able to have the adventure of their life. And I just have to, when you all say we're going off for an adventure, most of my friends, you know, I don't know, they probably did bad things. What you all did were remarkable and just awe-inspiring things as part of your great adventure, and we are all that much better and safer and probably stronger for your adventures. Nooney?
Thanks, Benita. All right, everybody, stand up. Stretch those bones. Time for jumping jacks. Turn around in your seat, shake those legs. And now you may sit down. Well, they're seconds. Or somebody said. Yeah, Benita and I go back a few years. I don't remember how many hair colors it was. When I was a youngster, I grew up in Lansingburg, went to Lansingburg High, came from a patriotic family, patriotic community. And I knew when I entered high school what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and that was to serve my country. I had listened to the stories my grandfather and uncle told me about what they had done during their service. When I was old enough to sign, I went into the Army recruiting station and I said, I want to join up. And I took all the tests necessary, and then I took my papers home and my mother refused to sign. Well, that was in the middle 60s. I wound up waiting a few years until it was time that I could actually sign myself in, and that's just what I did. And I've never looked back. My only regret is I didn't stay in longer. But in 1975, I raised my hand, and it was early 75. I'd already signed my papers in 74, but they didn't let me take the oath until after the first of the year. So I went through basic training, and I went through a 2-week program of basic training called Civilian Acquired Skills. I went in with the rank of PFC. But I'll tell you, my 2 weeks of basic training was just as strenuous as the 8 weeks that the rest of the women were going through in the active service. My time was with the reserve. People said we didn't get the same amount of training or do the same type of work, but we did. We always had our bags packed. We were always prepared to move out. My first 6 years I was with a general hospital out of Albany, 364th. And I understand that this past year they were deployed to Iraq. When I was with them, our deployment site would have been England, but I know deployment sites always change. I left the 364th after 6 years, and I went to the 413th Supply and Service Battalion in Schenectady. I reclassified my MOSs, became a supply sergeant, and I maintained supplies, not just for my company, but eventually for my battalion and the division. I handled the entire property book, which is every piece of equipment going that the Army Reserve unit I belong to controlled. 2 years I spent as a first sergeant. I was in control of all the enlisted personnel within my unit, and I knew every soldier by name, rank, serial number, their wife, their husband, and their children. I had to know those people in the event anything happened to any of us, whether we were on active duty or inactive duty. First sergeant rank put a lot of extra responsibility on my shoulders. And the more I saw these ladies and what they were doing and some of the different chores that we all took on, I knew that our stories had to get told in some way, shape, or form. Because when I was in high school, there were no books about women who served our country. When I was in college, there were no books about women who served our country. It's only been in the last 10 to 15 years that books have really started to come out. And it's time that more books get released. Problem is finding those publishers to have your stories told. As Benita said, we met when I started to work to honor Martha Ray. Martha Ray was an entertainer, Hollywood. Nobody knew about her as far as what she did with the military. And that's why I felt her story had to come out. And I worked hard to get her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In so doing, I was meeting women around the country who had served their country and had never told their stories. I heard about the women who were killed in Vietnam, whose names cannot be on the wall. I heard about the women who died during World War II, the women who served during Korea. I was meeting people from every step of life, and they've never told their stories. And it's important for us to get out there and collect them in some way, shape, or form. And I'm so glad that the U.S. Congress and New York State have taken it upon themselves to start collecting these stories and archiving them for future generations. When I put together Women at Risk, I interviewed over 60 women. It was the first time most of them have ever spoken about what they did serving their country. And they all said the same thing. I raised my hand, I volunteered, I did my job, and I went home. And I had to pull it out of them as to what they really did. And I was amazed at some of the things they did. And some of the people that I've met along the way, the donut dollies, they ripped my heart out. Because they were there to cheer the troops through all the wars. And they seldom got any credit for it. The nurses, yes, they were there doing their medical chores. And then I read books about the ladies who were taken POW in Bataan and in the South Philippines and how they were treated. And it makes you stop and think how lucky we are to be in this country, to be serving, to living here free, to have the opportunity to raise our hands if we want to leave a room if we want to be safe. Too many times we don't get that. The nurses were honored last weekend at a POW memorial service up in Lake George. We also honored the women who were POWs. We honored our Gold Star mothers. Sadly, a lot of folks don't know what a Gold Star mother is. I know I'm talking to the church choir here, because we all know what Gold Star Mothers are. But there's a lot of people out on the streets who have no clue. Each time I come to town, I get to have lunch with Benita. And it helps brighten my day a little bit, because she is there and she has been by my side so many times, helping us spread the word about our women vets. I remember the first time I took Colonel Liv to meet Benita, and we did a half-hour program. I remember the first time I took Terry to meet Benita, and we did another half-hour program to pass along the word of our women's military history. There's a lot of it out there. If you haven't already told your story to somebody, tell it. I collect them all the time, and I pass them on. And I meet so many folks around the country. As I mentioned when Frances was up and she read Hello, Dusty. Hello, David. I know Dusty. She and I are together twice a year in Washington. I never thought I would get to meet her, but her poem grabbed my heart the first time I saw it in D.C. And Margot, I can't believe you waited until the 10th anniversary to get down to D.C. because we've been there every year. And I drag Pam with me now so that she can get out there and meet other women vets, and the male vets too, and be able to feel free to talk about what all of us have gone through in the years. I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank Benita for taking part. She and I have talked about this for almost a year, trying to tackle down this date and be able to handle it. And I'm glad she's been sitting here by my side as we're writing notes back and forth. And ladies, thank you for traveling as far as you did today to come down here, or to come up, as in Millie's case, you came up from down below, and Helen, you came up from the Bronx. Thank you for coming up here. I'm going to turn this back over to Benita, because I know she has a couple words to say. And remember, afterwards, I know there's refreshments, and I've got some books here if anybody's interested in books. I know I have to get Pat Parner's signature on some books of my own, but she never signed my copy. Thank you all.
There's lots of ways to support a community. For some of you, it was putting on uniform, handing out support, caring, solace, and donuts. And for others, it's just being there to facilitate the stories of all of your work. I want to thank all of you for coming. And if anybody, do you want to do a formal Q&A with the ladies, or do you want to just go out and have some refreshments and chat with them there? The brothers go on refreshments. Yes?
Oh, we've got our raffle.
Oh, the raffle, but of course you have a box there and tickets and...
Come in and sign this week. I'm ready for anytime you want.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Who's got tickets? Does everybody have a ticket?
No.
You didn't buy tickets? What kind of raffle is this? No wonder you have trouble making money.
There you go.
Yes.
I want to explain this to Liza.
Sure.
Just last week I found out, we're talking about women in the military. There were between 800,000 and 1 million women in the Soviet Army in World War II. Women in the military.
Different worlds. It really talks about the difference in worlds. Yes.
There are 2 good books on women and women nurses.
Stand up. Stand up. Tell them in the voice they used to holler at the kids and, you know.
Okay. There's two books that I would recommend that people interested in the nurses in World War II. It's We Band of Angels and also G.I. Nightingale. It's one of the 2 of the best books I've ever read. Very, very good. Thank you. You can get
All right,
that
this
in
is the deal. The tickets are 3 for $5. It's, you're winning. What are we winning here? The Marriott Club membership raffle. 1 Marriott Club membership buys 2 meals. You get 1 free. A lot of other benefits. Is that what we're selling here? Yes? Doesn't matter. Just give them $5. Give them $5, they can use it, you'll be a winner. And then at the end of the year, just tell the tax man you really dropped 15, okay? Here they all are. By the way, I've been lifting pens and pencils all day, so if you're missing pens and pencils with red, white, and blue on them, I've got them. So you want to go around and we'll sell some more raffle tickets for a couple minutes. And you can, Chat with the ladies and then we'll announce the raffle winner. What do you win? What do you win? The sense of having done something good. No, it's with, you know what? Who knows what the raffle really is? You're getting dinners out of this deal. I'm not quite sure what, it wasn't clear.
I've got a commercial too that supports some of the things that have been said. And this is going to involve some of you ladies, I think, and men raising your hands. How many of you have been here or participated in an interview with the New York State Veterans Oral History Project? Super. How about the federal? Anybody? Okay, we've got. I would encourage those of you that are veterans that have not been interviewed, see one of us after. It's something we're looking for World War II veterans so that we can capture some of the great stories that you've heard up here so that your children and their children can hear this story. So we would encourage you to do that. We're also, I think it's going to be sometime in July, the museum will be open completely.